Now, first I want to let folks know that it just booted me out of the switchboard and completely out of the site. So I see in the chat room that a lot of people are getting booted and can't get back in. Whenever we have a guest that has important information like this, these kind of things seem to happen. And Mr. Shaw, first I want to say that I can't thank you enough for your work. I have actually done a ton of study on Agenda 21, and I have made several videos using clips from a couple of speeches that you gave on Agenda 21, especially where you explained the Wildlands Project map, and also explaining how they've replaced our curriculum in schools with this Agenda 21 education. So I just want to say thank you first for that and for coming on our show tonight.
Well, you're welcome. I must admit, you know, when I discovered Agenda 21, or it was brought to me, and I studied a bit back in the year 2000, my wife and I haven't stopped since, because this is the greatest threat that has ever materialized in the history of the world, designed to bring us to world governance, designed to control all our action, what we do, how we think, whether we have children, whether or not we live. So not coming to grips with it is, you know, failing oneself, and certainly fails the society around us.
Yeah, I had actually thought that, initially I said, oh, that can't be true. That map can't possibly be true, because people live all over the map there. And so where are they going to go? So when I got to looking into it, well, they fully plan on that many people no longer existing anymore. And that's not even an understatement. I mean, that is exactly what they have planned. And it's like some crazy religion for them or something. Is what I've uncovered. Is I believe it is their crazy religion, and that they're going to force it on everybody that's left. Is how I'm seeing it.
Well, I think that's right. They are Gaia worshipers. That means earth worshipers. So it does have religious overtones, but at the core, it's just pure power and muscle coming from a center core of very powerful people around the world. You know, people always ask, and I'm not a student of this, but I'll volunteer what I do know. People say, well, how can such a massive program come into being? I mean, who's behind this? To which I say, well, when you understand the fiat money system, you understand that the power can be concentrated in a way where such a program could take place. Now, when you look at the activists for Agenda 21, you see some obvious culprits. Mikhail Gorbachev, big advocate for Agenda 21. He was one of the authors of one of the three documents. It's called the Earth Charter. It's a very short document. You know, the Earth Charter, in the words of Gorbachev, the Earth Charter is to replace the Ten Commandments. I know Catholic sisters and their orders who support and educate on the Earth Charter. It just breaks my heart to see that kind of action being taken for the implementation of this globalist program.
Yeah, and that takes power. I mean, that takes to be able to influence organizations like all the churches, not so much the education system, because they seem to have been going that way anyway. But when I look at the UN, I notice that when it comes to their guiding principles and things like that, they kind of look to really 2 or 3 places for that. If you exclude Maurice Strong, because he's like lately the savior or their guru or whatever you want to call it. But before that, it always seems to have come from the same few places, like the Club of Rome or the Rockefeller Foundation, things like that. And they insert their own little piece. One group will blame population for this, and the other group will blame pollution for that. But you'll see later that they're all kind of connected on the final document, or they're together on 2 or 3 documents, and then it all came together here at Agenda 21 And I've been telling people that every climate meeting we've had, every piece of legislation that's come out about climate or anything like that came from that very first meeting they had there in Rio. Even this recent one that they just finished in Copenhagen was really just kind of a revisit, or maybe they thought they were going to finish their work that they started in Rio. And I know you were very responsible for helping most of us get a lot of information out, because several of us social media guys took your video and a couple other videos, and we really carried out the regular media's job by getting the information out. And so yeah, it's just a thrill tonight, I'm telling you.
Well, that's good. I appreciate that work. It's certainly clear that the major media is not going to get this out. People say, well, that's because, you're talking about, marginal issues. We're not talking about marginal issues, but why the media doesn't talk about it is that the media, much like the monetary, as you would expect from a monetary system that's centralized, controlled, and debt-driven, the media is owned by these same global financiers that own the banks and the multinational corporations. And so this word doesn't come out there. And you say, well, a skeptic would say, well, there's always opposition. There's always opposition to everything. Why don't we hear about the opposition from all levels with respect to this? And my answer to that would be that the sustainable developers themselves think they've come up with just a brilliant plan that everybody will want to be part of. You see, the thrust of Agenda 21, in their words again, is described as the 3 E's. It's the making of the 3 E's. The 3 E's are equity, which really means our system of justice, economy, which I'll talk about, and the environment. And so if you're a business person, you can like Agenda 21. All you have to do is partner up with government. Now, in the old days, we called that economic fascism. It is economic fascism. That is where we are turning. And when you look at your local communities and you see these affordable housing projects being built, know that that is a direct application of public-private partnership, meaning, as Mussolini called it, fascism. It's happening everywhere. Now, the door opened for that in the year 2005 with two United States Supreme Court decisions. One was called Lingle, the governor of Hawaii, versus Chevron. Chevron had the position of defending private property, if you can imagine that. And the Supreme Court, ruled 9-0 that Hawaii could limit Chevron's right to price its own gasoline in the state of Hawaii, that the state of Hawaii itself, for purposes of having some of the state's friends operate gas stations, could control the prices everybody charged. The court said, we no longer consider the public purpose requirement of the Fifth Amendment to mean what everybody thought it meant. The public purpose requirement of the Fifth Amendment was obliterated. 1 month later, Kelo came down, where the Supreme Court said 300 houses can be demolished because the city wants to give that land to Pfizer so they can build a parking lot, Pfizer drugs. It used the Lingle versus Chevron decision as the basis, and it said that partnerships between government and their favorite buddies was legitimate, even if it meant you, the homeowner, lost your home. It was a dramatic shift in the whole foundation for this country, and it has just moved the Agenda 21 process right along, because now what government does is it decides it wants to take that land and it wants to have this affordable housing project on it, and so they'll go get their nonprofit housing builder, which are typically very inefficient at controlling construction costs, and always have a whole ton of very highly paid people who get all this tax money to build the marketplace's housing. we're being set up.
Right, and I've said for a long time here that it's crazy how 70 years ago it was not cool to be a Hitler, to be a socialist, but now you say socialism, people faint over in glee. They can't believe they're getting the same socialism that people before thought was taboo and couldn't be done.
I don't think people will be filled with glee for long.
No.
Because anyone who thinks they're immune from the die-off that is part of this program is simply nuts. This program is going to become extraordinarily destructive, and it will not be able to be stopped unless we understand it before it becomes particularly